Might take a couple more minutes for those fellas to get on board. Okay, our sponsors for today and are as follows. The Year of Learning, Sue and Arnie Garelick, in memory of Malka Pearl Mann and Philip Mann, in memory of their family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Shall assure her children and grandchildren, excuse me, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva, Marcia Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Liska, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Ethel Bas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Marjorie Sedell and Irving and Pearl Kaplan, friends of Avi Gitler, Avrameir ben Shimon and Martha Gitler, Shana Bas Yeshaya, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim, many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi. A Month of Learning by Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her father, Eliezer ben Tzvi Hirsch, Bee Pizer, her father, Yitzchak Dov ben Shmuel, Mordechai and Miriam Burr, in memory of his mother, Manya bas Harav Shimon Halevi, Stanley Presser, in memory of his wife, Chayalea bat Zev HaKohen. A Week of Learning, Bonnie Galb Jackson, in memory of her father, Mordechai Yoel ben Binyamin. And today we have a Day of Learning by Eliana Goldwasser, in memory of her husband, Eliyahu ben Mordechai. May the Neshamas have an Aliyah, Crank Rafil Velti Yeshir Shema Taliyah, L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Gaben Shtiar.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
How's your mother-in-law doing, Red?
What?
How is your mother-in-law?
Well, we'll see. I haven't had a chance to check the email yet this morning, so we'll see. Okay. Just one brief administrative item. Many of us received a smaller version of the Daf Yomi calendar at the beginning of the cycle. Okay. And that really went up to, let's call it Tishrei, right? Up to Sukkot. They have come out with a fuller calendar. Okay, so if anyone would like, let me know, and I will put orders in for them. Okay. All right. It's they didn't make it they made it a little different format, so it's a bit thicker too. Goes all the way from last January, the 2020, through till mid-June of 2027. Okay.
Wow.
So,
But it's also available online.
yeah, probably.
Who put it out?
It's the same one. It's the Daf Yomi calendar from the Daf Yomi Commission, Agudas Israel.
Aguda. Thank you.
I don't know if we've seen Harvey. Have you seen anything out from?
No, the kind of Woodmere, no,
No, nothing, huh?
no. I'll go back again and look today.
All right.
Every so often I go
Right.
to see what's there, but
I
it's
would
not.
like one of those Gouda calendars.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I do too. I do
will
also.
order- I will order some then, and we'll take care of it. Okay? Usually they send a
I'm
whole
blanking
bunch,
also. Right.
you know? Eh, So either I get it, or sometimes they send to Sid Paris as well. So we'll see. Okay? We're on Yud Chet Amud Aleph, the Mishnah. Okay? Basically, we suggested yesterday when we finished that this Mishnah picks up where the previous Mishnah ended in terms of what happened during the sequestering of the Kohen Gadol. Okay? And discusses that time period. Okay? So our Mishnah starts, Matnitin says our Mishnah, Masrulos Kenim Miziknei Beit Din. Okay? So the original elders that took them out, and were meeting with him in that location, that Lishka, where they were supposedly teaching him, reviewing with him the laws and practices of Yom Kippur. Okay? They handed him over then to other elders, other Zakanim of the court. Right? We can assume for the moment that it's the Sanhedrin Gedola. The Korin Lefanav Beseder Hayom. Okay, and they would then read him the order of the day. Okay? What do we mean by the order of the day? Perhaps the Gemara will clarify in a moment. Va'omrim lo ishi kohen gadol krei ata baficha, that you should read it. Okay? Shema shechachta, perhaps you forgot. In other words, you learned it back when you were a Kohen in training, so to speak. Okay? Or Shema lo lamadata, or perhaps you didn't learn it. Okay? Now, Meforshim have a extensive issue with this phrase. How could it be that somebody who reached the point of Kohen Gadol never learned the halachas and the practices of Yom Kippur? The basic answer that seems most feasible is that during the first temple, it was one thing. During the second Beis HaMikdash, remember the position of Kohen Gadol was available for purchase.
Yeah, this guy paid for it.
What? They bribed somebody. Right. And so therefore, that doesn't mean that they had the proper education.
Right.
Okay, so we'll hold it right there with that explanation, because we'll see the Gemara is going to come back to this issue. Okay, Erev Yom Kippurim, Shachrit, so the day before Yom Kippur in the morning, what would they do? Ma'amidin oto b'shar mizrach. They made him stand in the eastern gate. Okay, now the eastern gate, and what would they do there? Uma'avirim lefanav parim va'elim kvasim, and they brought before him various bulls and various rams, right, and various lambs. So all the various animals that would be brought as offerings on Yom Kippur, so that he would begin to recognize and be familiar with them. Kadei sheyehei makir v'ragil ba'avodah, so that he would be recognized and be familiar with them. Okay, for the purpose of the avodah. Kol shivat hayamim lahayu monim mimenu ma'achal u'mishteh, and for the entire 7 days of his sequestering, they let him eat whatever he would like, drink whatever he would like. However, I'm putting in Erev Yom Kippurim, the eve of Yom Kippur, Im Chashecha, once it began to get dark, Lo hayu manichim oto le'echol harbe, they did not allow him to eat a great deal, B'pnei shehamachal mevi et hashena, because eating a large, full meal would bring about sleep. Okay? I'm sure some of us have that experience on Shabbos afternoon. Okay? Now, Gemara says as follows, Bishlema Shema Shachach. We understand it's possible that he forgot L'chaye. Right? That's his life. That's fine. Ela Shema Lo Lamad. How is it possible that he didn't learn it? Mimok Minan Ki Chai Gavna. Do we establish and read into the line here, a Kohen Gadol in such a case? Vahatanya. But wasn't it taught elsewhere in a Braita? HaKohen HaGadol Me'achav. That the Kohen Gadol must be unique, separate, above from his brethren, namely, Sheyehe Gadol Me'achav B'koach, that he must be greater than his brethren in strength, Benoi, in his being handsome, B'chachma, in his being wise, Uba'osher, and with wealth. In other words, he has to be literally, in a sense, head and shoulders above his colleagues. Achirim omrim, others say, minayan she'im ein lo. How do we know, what does it mean? HaKohen HaGadol Me'achav, namely that if he doesn't have the property, the wealth, she'achiv HaKohanim megadlin oto, that his brethren, the other Kohanim, must raise him up. Talmud Lomar, says the text, HaKohen HaGadol Me'achav, that he's above his brethren. Gedalehu Mishel Echav, that they must raise him from their portions, from their own. In other words, they have to contribute to him to be financially well off. Now, Amar Rav Yosef, Lo Kasha. Rav Yosef is saying this issue is not really a problem. Kan b'mikdash rishon, says Rav Yosef. In one case, we were talking about the first temple. Kan b'mikdash sheni. In the other case, okay, in other words, if he forgot, that's when we were talking about the first base of Mikdash. If
He
never
didn't
learned
know
it,
it was the second.
right? We're talking the second. The Amar Rabbi Yassi, as Rabbi Yassi told us the following story, right? Tirkavna de dinari, a half a seah of coins, dinarium, Aila le Marta bat Baitus, was brought to him by Martha, the daughter of Baitus, Liyanai Malka, to Yanai the king, al de okme li Hoshua ben Gamla bekahane Rav Ravi, that when Yanai the king appointed Yehoshua ben Gamla as the Kohen Gadol, the daughter of Baitus brought the king a nice sum of money. Okay, so the example clearly then was that the king treasury benefited. Now, next piece from our Mishnah. Erev Yom Kippurim Shachrit Chule. Right? Tana. So it said there, right, that what did they do? They brought him, right? Af Hasi'irim. So the Gemara says, wait a second. It mentioned in that case in our Mishnah that they brought rams. They brought the bulls and the rams and the lambs. How come here also they should have mentioned that they brought goats? Vatana didan, and our Tana, who said our Mishnah, Mai Tama lo Tana Sirim. What was the reason that he did not teach also goats? Right? Kevan da'al chet. Why? Because there's the issue of it reminds one of sin. Ka'atu. In other words, it may remind the Kohen Gadol of certain deeds that were sinful. and therefore chal shadate. Okay, this would defer his mindset. It would weaken his intent. He would not be able to focus on the avoda if he was dealing with perhaps his own past inappropriate acts. Ihachi, if that's the case, says the Gemara, parnami al chetu. It's possible that he could have done some act that would have required him to bring a bull, right? That also could be the case, da'ate, and he would have to bring it. No, the Gemara answers, par kivan da'alu da'alav ve'al echav hakohanim hu da'ate. No, says the Gemara, that the bringing of a bull offering by the Kohen Gadol reflects a occasion of having committed a sin on the part of himself and his fellow Kohanim. That's when it would be brought. Be'achav haKohanim, ika inish de'it bei milta. Regarding his his brethren Kohanim, if there is someone who has a thing, in other words, who committed some sort of an act, Meda Yadale, he would be aware of it, the Kohen Gadol, Umahader Le B'tshuva, and by bringing the offering, he would help bring about the repentance of that individual. Bekulhu Yisrael, but in regards to the entire Jewish people, Lo Yada, he would not know, and therefore he would be more dismayed, and it would detract from his ability to focus on the avoda of Yom Kippur, which is to bring atonement for the entire nation. Hainu da'amre inshe, and this is what people mean when they say as follows: Ibar achaltech daila, if the son of your sister is a policeman, a constable, okay, a magistrate, an official, have chaze b'shuka, kame lo tachalif. Be careful if you're seen in the marketplace, right, before him, because who's to say that he will not have to change his attitude, in other words, act on something that you might be doing. Okay. Next comes the piece again from our Mishnah. Kol Shivat Hayamim La Hayu Mon'im V'chulei, referring to the fact that they allowed him to eat, right? Tanya, says a Braita, Rebbe Yehuda ben Nekusa Omer. He says as follows, okay, and suggests that during those 7 days, certain foods were acceptable and certain foods were not appropriate. What does he tell us? Ma'chilin oto slatot ubeitzim kedei lemismaso, that they feed the Kohen Gadol fine flour or pastry and eggs in order so that he can eliminate them. In other words, pass them through his body. So the implication being that you clean out his system in advance so that he won't have to have any problems on the day of Yom Kippur. Okay? Amrulo, and they said to him, Kol shekain shetam violi de chimum. But what about the fact that food, some of these foods might make him, bring him to chimum, here being a phrase to clarify that it might result in his having some sort of excitement, some sort of seminal emission. Okay, Tanya, and now we have another Braita. Sumcha Samar, Mishum Rabbi Meir, the name of Rabbi Meir, Ein ma'achilin oto lo aleph bet yud, va'amre la lo aleph bet yud. That there are certain foods that we will name based on these mnemonic devices that you wouldn't feed him. V'yesh omrim af lo yayin lavan, and others say not even white wine. Lo aleph bet yud, not these three foods, namely lo etrog, okay, v'lo beitzim, and no eggs, v'lo yayin yashan, and not old wine. V'amrei la, and others say lo aleph bet yud, lo etrog, not an etrog, v'lo beitzim, and not eggs, v'lo basar shamein, and not fatty meat, v'lo yayin yashan, and not old wine. V'yesh omrim, and there are those that say af lo yayin lavan, and also not white wine. B'pnei shehayayin lavan mevi et ha'adam lidei tum'ah. Why? Because white wine, if it becomes a little bit inebriated, could lead a person to some act of toma, namely an act of physical behavior that is inappropriate. Tanu Rabbanan says, a new Braita. Okay? And what they're going to do now is, since they mention the fact that it could lead to the Kohen Gadol having some sort of nocturnal emission or something else, they're going to make a parallel. Says this new Braita, Zav tolim lo b'ma'achal. If a person is a Zav, we are going to say that it may be dependent on what he ate, as opposed to something in terms of his physical status. V'chol minei ma'achal, and all varieties of food. Eliezer ben Pinchas Omer, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, Ein ma'achilin oto, that we do not feed him, and we may assume for the moment that it's referring to a zav. Lo chet gimel bet yud, v'lo gimel bet mem. Okay. Namely, v'lo kol dvarim hamavi'in lidei tumah. Okay, and nor any other foods that are going to lead him to some sort of impurity. Okay. Lo chet gimel bet yud. What does that refer to? Lo chalav, not milk, v'lo gvina, and not cheese, v'lo betza, and not egg, v'lo yayin, and not wine, v'lo gimel bet samach, and nor these three foods. Me grisin shel pul, okay, that's a pounded bean soup, that was a common food, ubasar shamen, fatty meat, umirias, or fish brine, v'lo kol dvar, right? These were all foods that were apparently very common, but the issue was, could these foods lead to problems? V'lo kol dvarim hamavi'im lidei tumah, and not other foods that might result in impurity. La'atuye mai, excuse me, to include what? La'atuye ha, to include that. The Tanu Rabbanan, as the rabbis also taught in a Braita. Chamisha dvarim mevi'im et ha'adam lidei tumah, that there were 5 things that led a person to impurity. Ve'elu hein, and they would be as follows. Hashum, garlic. Let's go over now. V'hashchalim, that was cress. Cress was a kind of plant. Okay. Okay. Almost, I can't say parallel it to celery, but that would be the closest example that I could give. Okay. And the next one would be Bechal Golgot. Okay, Bechalag Logot. That was called purslane. That again was a kind of plant, okay, that you could eat the leaves from. V'habeitzim, and eggs. V'hagar goyer, and that is arugula, which is a kind of plant that was common to be used for mustard. Okay, so some of these items were plants, that were grew wild actually in Eretz Yisrael and could easily be picked and used as herbs and things like that. So the Gemara continues. V'yitzei echad al hasadeh lelaked orot, as we find in a pasuk that said that one went out into the field to collect orot, and here orot meaning herbs. Now, a new piece from our Gemara tells us as follows. Tana mishmei de Rabbi Meir, ze gargir. Rabbi Meir said that what was this plant? Gargir, this arugula. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that the pasuk was referring to that particular plant. Rabbi Yochanan says, Lama nikra shman orot. Why then does the pasuk use the phrase orot, lights, okay, so to speak? Namely, shemeirot et ha'enayim, because they enlighten the eyes. Okay, in other words, they brighten, they wake somebody up, mustard, right? Now, Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, Hamotzi gargir im yachola ochlo, one who finds this arugula plant, if he's able to eat it, should eat it. Okay? Ve'im lav ma'aviro al gabe anav. And if not, okay, he should rub it, pass it over his eyes. Okay? Implication being, again, that the various plants had both a physical effect medically as well as otherwise. Okay? All right. Now, Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, Begargita mitzrana'a. Okay? We're talking, he said, particularly about the kind of arugula plant that would grow on the edge or the border of a field, that was the best variety. Okay. Gemara picks up now with another discussion. Amar Rav Gidl, says Rav Gidl, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav. Achsanai, okay, a visitor, okay, lo ya'achal beitzim, should not eat eggs in the home of his host. Okay. Now, you remember that we had this whole list of foods that said it was going to possibly lead to tumah, to a nocturnal emission. And so the Gemara clarifies by giving an example. If somebody's a guest, he shouldn't eat eggs in the home of the host. Okay, why? V'lo yishan b'talito shel bal habayit. And he also shouldn't sleep in the cloak, the garment of the host. The implication being, okay, that he could soil it, exactly. Rav, says the Gemara, when Rav, ki makleya ledarshish, when he arrived to the community of Darshish, machriz, he would announce, man havya liyoma, who wants to be my wife for a day? Okay, the implication being that he would marry her, okay, and then later divorce her, okay, so that there's a reasoning thinking here that that would help prevent him from, let's say, a nocturnal emission. Okay. Rav Nachman, when Rav Nachman also, Kad Makle L'Shnatziv, when he also arrived to the village, the town of L'Shnatziv, Machriz Man Havya Liyoma, who also would be a wife for me for a day. Okay. Now, the Gemara is bothered by these rabbis making such announcements. Vahatanya, aren't we taught elsewhere in a Braita? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, he says as follows, Lo yisa adam isha b'medina zo, v'yelech v'yisa asha b'medina acheret, that a person should not marry a woman, let's say in this province, and then go and marry another woman in another province. Shema yizdavgu ze, perhaps, okay, he would have relations with her, and each woman would have a child. One would have a male, one would have a female. And what would happen? Yizdavgu ze etzel ze, v'nimsa ach noseach oto. And the result would be ultimately that a brother would be marrying a sister. Or worse, va'av nosei bito. Okay. Now, says the Gemara, umemale kol ha'olam kulo mamzerut. And as a result, the entire world would be full of mamzerut. Va'al ze ne'amar. And on this, the following pasuk was cited, Umala haaretz zima, that the story there was that the land was full of, inappropriate sexual behavior. Amrei Rabbanan, the rabbis, however, said as follows, Kula itlahu, that as far as these rabbis go, okay, they have a call, a voice, which really means they have a reputation. And as a result, people would know who their progeny is. V'ha'amar Rava. And don't we then also find that Rava says as follows, Tiva'uha lehinase, that what would he do? These rabbis would arrange a marriage proposal in advance. V'nit paisa, and the women then, if they accepted that proposal, right? Tzricha leshev shiva nikiyim, that they would have to wait 7 clean days before the wedding. Okay, so the Gemara tells us, Rabbanan odoye havu moda'au laho, that the rabbis, however, would send a messenger, right? Mikedem havu mekadme umeshadre shlucha, that they would announce their coming in advance. And as a result, before they would come, they would send in advance before them some sort of messenger. And that would then allow the women to, if they were willing to accept the proposal, wait the 7 days. The ibayat ema, and if you want, I would say, Yehude havu miyachte laho, that if they did have, spend time with them, it only allowed them to be alone with them and not to have relations with them. Lafi she'eno domeh mi sheyesh lo pat besalo, lami she'en lo pat besalo. Okay, this is a beautiful euphemism. Okay, that one who has bread in his basket doesn't get as hungry as one who doesn't have bread in his basket. Okay, the implication clearly being that one who has the opportunity for relations is not going to be tempted in certain situations and result in an impurity and a nocturnal emission than someone else who doesn't. Okay. All right. Our new Mishnah. Okay. What happens? We continue regarding now the Kohen Gadol. Masruhu leziknei Beit Din. Okay. So those elders of the Beit Din now, in a sense, hand him over to others. Leziknei Kuhuna, to the elders of the Kuhuna. V'ha'eluhu Beit Avtinas, and they bring him then to the house of Atimus. Now, I just want to quickly point out that remember it was the household of Timus that was the location where the incense was produced. Okay, so we can assume perhaps that there's something in regard there. Okay, and what did they do? Vehishbi'uhu. They made him take an oath. V'niftaru v'halchu lahem. After he took this oath, then they would leave, right? V'amrulo, and they said to him, and they're ready to depart, Ishi Kohen Gadol, Anu Shluchei Beit Din. Okay, Mr. Kohen Gadol, we are the representatives of the court. And that's why I suggested, referring to the Sanhedrin Gadol. Va'ata shluchenu, and you are our representative. V'shliach Beit Din, you are the representative of the court. Mashbi'in anu alayich, b'mi sheshachan shemo b'bayit hazeh. And we adjure you, we make you take an oath by the name of the one who dwells in this house. Shelo tishaneh davar mikol ma she'amarnu lach, that you will not change a single, I'm putting in thing, from that which we have spoken to you. Remember, they were concerned that the Kohen Gadol could have followed Sadducee, okay, Sadducee practices, and not the accepted Pharisaic practices. Hu poresh uboche, he leaves and cries, v'hein porshinu bochin, and they likewise leave and cry. Im hu haya chacham, if he were a sage, doresh, he would then expound Torah. V'im lav, and if not, talmidei chachamim doshim lefanav, then other sages would expound Torah before him. V'im ragil likrot, and if he was used to reading in the Torah, koreh, he would read from the Torah. V'im lav, and if not, korin lefanav, they would read before him, not only from the Torah, but we're going to see from other sources. Ubameh korin lefanav, and what then did they read before him? Be'iyov, in the book of Job, Uba Ezra, in the book of Ezra, Uba Divrei Hayamim, and in the Chronicles, the book of Divrei Yamim. So now the Gemara tells us, Zechariah ben Kivutel, Omer, he tells us the following, Pa'amim harbe, kariti lefanav b'Daniel. There were many times, he said, when I also read from the book of Daniel. Now, we are going to wonder, okay, because we're not going to see it immediately, why these particular books perhaps were chosen. We'll have to look to see as we get further on in the Gemara if there's a discussion of that. But tomorrow we'll pick up on Yud Tet Amud Aleph with the new Gemara, where it's going to tell us, okay, why was it that they brought him particularly to Beit Avtimus? As we said, it was the place where the incense was produced, and we're going to see what that discusses, okay? So that's, so to speak, previews of coming attractions. Okay? Everybody take care and stay well, all right?
Have a
Thank you,
good day.
Thank you
everyone.
very much. Have a great day.
Have a great day.